Welcome back to Local Decision 2020. I'm Rusty Ray. We're joined now by the DFL candidate for State Senate out of District 31. This is Kate Luthner. Kate, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
You're a very busy person, a member of the Forest Lake Area School Board. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what you're talking about and a lot of what you're looking at for this state run is education.
Correct.
It's so important to you, just with your background, with your family, and obviously what you're involved in now. Tell me more about that. Tell me what the main thrust of that is for you on a state level.
Well, on a state level, people ask, why didn't you run for House? Why didn't you run for County Commissioner? Why didn't you run for any of these other really impactful offices that are out there? When you look at where the decisions are made for school funding and the architecture of how our schools get to frame themselves, it's been done between the House and the Senate fairly equally. Mm-hmm. However, if you start looking at the voting records, the House has some good advocates for education. They consistently vote for decent increases, keeping up with inflation, sometimes surpassing inflation. And the Senate does not. The Senate voted for 0.5% increase. So that's, if you want to put it sensationally, that's defunding schools. And that's not what happened in the end, because we do have a government that works together. In the end, we ended up with a 2% increase, so just about keeping up with inflation. However, when politicians take credit for that spending, they kind of make it sound like, oh, we're all for education. And in reality, that 2% was the House, and I feel like if I was in the Senate, I would be one more strong voice trying to say we need to truly fund education and look at the formula to make sure how we're funding it is correct.
In Minnesota, where do you feel like that has a place, though, with all the other things that the state is spending a lot of money on? And the state, perhaps, maybe this isn't the right way to say it, prides itself on providing certain services or infrastructure or even parks or stuff like that. Where do you feel like education ranks now, and where would you like to see it?
I know that dollars and cents, they really do spend a lot of money on education. I think it should be number one. It's not like we need a standing army. Right now we have COVID and a healthcare crisis that needs to take at least front and center for a while. However, education is the foundation. It's like buying a beautiful car and then refusing to maintain anything about it. We need education, K-12, and then a robust college system and trade schools to make sure that we're creating a population base that can enjoy, sustain, pay taxes, make an impact on everything else.
Do we see this played out with districts like Centennial or even Forest Lake schools having to pass levies to get more funding out of an individual tax base or district in order to pay for things that are needed, even if it's simply fixing up facilities or updating an ice arena or providing more resources K through 12 in the classroom? Is that the answer, and is that an indication that the state needs to be spending more centrally?
It's a really interesting question, because people don't completely understand the bond levy situation. And that's how I kind of jumped in a little bit of the deep end, is that I helped run the Vote Yes campaign for the levy, and that was needed. Forest Lake area schools did not have enough money. They were cutting teachers every single year because there just wasn't enough funding from the state. Centennial's in the same boat. North Branch is the same, Blaine is the same, White Bear is the same, that the reason they make their programs is because they have levies. And some districts pass them like, sure, absolutely, I'll give you that money you need. And other districts are like, no, when I went to school, uphill both ways, one-room schoolhouse, why do you need more money? So levies are the solution at this time. Mm-hmm. They're inequitable. So across the state, you end up seeing communities that can't afford it or don't believe in it, and they fail, and their kids get a less rich education because they can't afford the more teachers for the smaller class, or their teachers leave after 5 years to be able to, right, pay mortgages. I don't love the levy system. If I could say we will just pay for it at a state level, that would be a lot more equitable. We can't do that with a light switch. That's going to be a process. And that's one of the reasons why I want to get in there and start really advocating for, let's look at this system, let's see how we can do it better.
From where you are, what else do you see on that list of things that you think, as a senator in the state, you could help make a difference in finding ways to spend the state's money and things to focus on. We're going to get to the elephant in the room in just a second, which is COVID, but what are there other priorities that you see out there?
Well, I hate to say spending the state's money, but it's allocating resources wisely. And we've got a lot of resources. We've got taxes from individuals, we've got taxes from businesses, we've got natural resources, and then we've got all the people who live here who are like human resources. And I come from a business background, so looking at what is the best impact for us, I think we need to fix healthcare, and however that ends up being a thing at the state level, because that's tied into federal, that's tied into businesses, what the state needs to do to help make that great, it really should. So looking at what details are in that category, that giant subfolder, but education and healthcare are foundations. They don't build your house on sand.
Your opponent talked about there not being room to tax the wealthy. Is it just a, let's do this and we're going to get all this other revenue and it's going to be great. She also talked about the corporate tax and the availability to increase that or widen that is not what people think it is. And it's very complex, and I'm not going to pretend to be able to explain it either. And she didn't go into great detail about it, but she basically said that's not the answer. Yes, we need to find ways to bring in more revenue so that we can do all of the things that all of the people are talking about. But she says it's not that simple.
It's not. She's been in the job for 10 years. She hasn't found a solution yet. And this is a big problem, but I don't see a lot of people talking about it either. And taxing the upper percent, I think it's going to just have to be. If you look at every other developed country, there are higher taxes. I have family in Europe, and they laugh at our taxes. They're like, "You're upset about that? Ha 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 ha." So every bit of our taxes is less than what the majority of the world, equivalent world pays. Gas tax, clothing tax, VAT, everything in Europe is more expensive. Asia's getting to the same place. We need to pull our tax revenue from somewhere, but we also need to really wisely spend. So looking into better audit procedures, looking into where our money can be spent most wisely, I think that's part of the solution. But yes, there does need to be income to be able to have a budget.
She talked a lot about what she's had to do in the face of COVID and what senators and lawmakers have had to do given this unprecedented situation and the politics and all of that involved. What do you think COVID has pushed back for the state to deal with? Or do you think it's occupied the time and occupied the sessions that they have had, whether they be special sessions this summer or the legislative session last spring? Do you think COVID has postponed anything really pressing for the state?
Well, the bond bill. I think it got political. We started out as a we're in this together. It's us versus the disease. We need to band together, be good citizens, and take care of each other. And I respect how Governor Walz was very calm. He seemed very methodical. The press conferences gave me confidence, even when I was thinking like, oh my gosh, they're seriously shutting it down. Unprecedented in my lifetime, absolutely. But then it became political. I don't know if people got tired of caring or if they didn't see their neighbors dropping dead, therefore it wasn't actually a big deal. Or they started rationalizing it, like, well, it's all in this category, and that's not me. And when we start doing a it's not me metric, you gotta think about it. Because I studied history, that was my major in college. I was a political science and history major. And history, it doesn't repeat, but there's a tune, and you can see what starts happening when it's, well, it's not me that's dying, or it's not us, or it's those people. So I think we need to be better than that and be collective about it. But yeah, absolutely. It took all the oxygen out of every single project. And I think their hindsight, and I know all the senators and House members did their best, but at some point they started doing their best for themselves. And they started, what looks good for me? What do my people want to hear? Instead of what do we need to do?
And looking forward to January, if you're able to take office as a senator, looking ahead, knowing that COVID probably will impact decisions that have to be made, even if there is some sort of next step, if it's a vaccine or if it's things are able to, for whatever reason, return to normal as it would be. What do you think moving forward will be the next steps for the state, and how much of that will be dictated by COVID as well?
Dictated by COVID, almost as much as you let it or as little as you let it. The government has tried to put some markers out there. I appreciate that Governor Walz gave us guidelines for opening schools, not rules. He said between X and Y, this is the guidance, and between Y and Z, this is the guidance. But those goalposts are then, you have to examine them. So I'd like that sort of forward momentum of, okay, here's our scientists, here's our nonpartisan, non-political, academic, best as we know right now advice, and let's make that as, this is what we look at, and then we'll talk about every other thing in that context. But yeah, the bonding bill needs to happen, education needs to happen, healthcare needs to happen. We can't stop forever. We need to either figure out how to make it work with COVID or figure out how to make it work with COVID. There's no other option.
How would you characterize on a state level your district, 31? It's part of Anoka County, and part of it is in Anoka County, I should say, and Anoka County, fourth largest city, county in the state, but that district in particular, not the most densely populated part of the county, so it is different maybe than other parts of even Anoka County. Is there anything in particular that you feel like you're bringing to the table as having lived there, being invested there with leadership in the school district, raising your family there, that you can bring to the halls in St. Paul? Anything in particular about you and your district?
And that's interesting that you bring up how different we look. We are that first ring outside of the cities where we start getting rural. And it's been a struggle to communicate within the district. And I don't want to bring up an issue when you didn't ask about it, but broadband,
okay.
Border-to-border broadband, that's something that I would advocate for. I mean, you know, in my copious extra time up there. But that's kind of on the infrastructure end of things. We need a way to communicate and be present across the whole district. And there's farmers and people out on their 40 acres who just don't care about what's going on, but it impacts them greatly. And so as in a leadership position, I won't forget about them. I will go visit them. I love visiting and meeting and learning new things. Last week I went to go see one of the unions down in the cities. They have a training center there that they teach the painters. It's the painters union. The amount of infrastructure that you don't even know that's just like right below the surface is fantastic. And I want to spend the time when I'm not in session meeting all the different factions within the district. And yeah, I live on the corridor. I am the soccer mom. I do school board and PTO and bake sales. And that's something I'm really familiar and comfortable with, but I want to stretch my world. I don't want to live in a small world. I want to live in a big world, and I want all our neighbors to enjoy all the interconnectivity that we can give them while still maintaining the privacy they want on their 40 acres.
Well, there would be discrepancies in that regard even within the district, right? Those closer to town would be perhaps in better place broadband-wise than folks maybe on the northern or let's say northwestern or northeastern, edge of your district. And that discrepancy seems kind of hard to fathom.
Yeah, somebody said it wasn't an issue because I had it on my initial like top 3 things. These are what I want to work on. Someone's like, that's not an issue, take that off your list. I'm like, no. If anything, COVID and the business entrepreneur from home has shown us anything that there isn't broadband past a certain line, and encouraging the growth, encouraging people to use it. I think we need it, and you don't even know you need it until you have it and you lose it. And we moved out of a better area to a less good internet area. And we, every day, my kids don't know commercials, but they do know buffering.
Because they're waiting for stuff to load.
Waiting for stuff to load. And we're like calling up, hey, who's using all the internet? Like, get off the Zoom. When we have 3 kids doing distance learning at home, and my husband's worked from home for the last 10 years. His job just is remote.
What is it about running for office? Certainly you hold public office, school board, but now you're seeking a higher office and you're running an election in this crazy time. And are you able to get face-to-face with people and interact with people the way you would want to in order to hear what they have to say in order to then apply it to your campaign?
Not as much as I'd want to, but I'll just take the balls and swing at them. So if you say, I'll give you an interview, I'll be like, absolutely, I'll do that. So there's no parades to march in. Okay, well, there's social media I can focus on. I can do call lists. I've been using social media professionally for years. I can write letters to the editor. There's a lot that I can do. I'm a person who likes to focus on what I can do. We all make choices. And you let go of all the things you can't do. You don't sit and think about, well, I could have been this, or I could have married that guy. You just like, no, I love the job I have, and I love the person I married, and everything behind us is history, and let's look at what we can do.
Okay, we're going to leave it on that.
Okay.
All right. Kate Luthner, thank you for coming by.
Thank you very much.